All right, this lesson is going to be covering lesson 215 and 216, and we're going to be trying to look at two mats and decide which mat has the greater amount. All right, as you can see here, we have two mats, the left mat and the right mat, and we want to try to figure out which mat has the greater amount. So we need to do some legal moves. You might remember these from last year. So the first thing that I always look for are there any zero pairs that I can make to simplify? We did this in the lessons before this, so it should be familiar. So up here, I see opposite tiles in the same region. So I see a positive and a negative one. Those make 0, so you can cross those off. Okay, I see another set of those, a positive and a negative tile, and a positive and a negative. Those all made 0. Okay, so I just kind of start with those. All right, down below here, now I'm kind of looking at these tiles. Now, they're in the opposite region, so they're really opposite of what I think. So this is really negative, that's a positive, but they're still opposite tiles, so they're going to make a 0 pair. So far I made all those 0 pairs. Now, I'm going to come to the right mat and do the same thing really quick. So over here, I see a positive and a negative, and a positive and a negative. Those will cancel each other out. And then in the negative region down below here, I also see a positive and a negative, which are really opposite, but they still cancel each other out. All right, another legal move that you can do is to flip whatever you see in the negative region. You can flip it to the positive region and make it opposite. So down here, right now, that's a negative 1, but it's in the opposite region. So it's really a positive 1. So sometimes I like to come up to the top and just draw it up here as a positive 1 and then cross it off down here. Okay, same thing down here. I see in this other region, I see 2 negative 1s, which are really 2 positive 1s because they're in the opposite region. So I'm going to come draw those up here. So I drew 2 positive 1s, and I'll cross those off. Okay, another legal move, the last one that you kind of need to remember from last year, is if you have the same amount on both sides, you can take that same amount away from both sides. So here, I see 3 1 tiles. I also see 3 1 tiles over here. That's the exact same amount. If I'm comparing and it has the same amount, I can get rid of both of those. So I can get rid of those 3 1 tiles from both sides. Okay, so I'm left with, on this left mat, I have 0. On the right mat, I have 0. So which mat is greater? Well, they're actually equal. So the left and the right mat are both equal. Okay, let's try another one. Now I'm going to show you a couple different ways to think of it when we do this problem. But everything that I did in the last slide still works. So first thing I'm going to look for is 0 pairs. I see a positive and a negative 1. Over here, I see a positive and a negative 1 as well. So I'm going to cross those off. Okay, I'm going to look in the negative region down here. Same thing, if they're opposite tiles, you can cancel them right away. These are opposites, they're going to cancel. These are opposites, they're going to cancel. Okay, on the left mat over here, I see a positive and a negative x, which are actually both opposites. So again, I can cancel those. All right, now, another thing that I sometimes do, instead of flipping the tiles that are down here right away, is I just think, well, is there the same thing on both sides? Remember, when you're comparing mats, if it's the same thing on both sides, you don't need to even look at it because that part's equal. So down here I see 2 positive tiles, and down here I see 2 positive tiles. It's the same amount on both sides. So you can get rid of it. You don't need to look at that amount because those are both equal. Okay, now let's look at the top. Over here I see an X tile and an X tile. Again, same amount on both sides. I don't really need to look at that, so I'm going to cancel those out. Okay, so those are gone. All right, now another thing that I would do now that I'm kind of to this step is I see 2 positive tiles down here, but they're in the opposite region. So I'm going to flip those and make those 2 negative tiles up above. And I crossed them off. And then same thing on the right side. I see a negative X tile, but it's in the opposite region, so it's really a positive X. So I'll come draw a positive X up here and cross that off. Oops, and I should shade it in, positive X. Okay, now I see another move that I can do. I see an X on both sides. So again, you can get rid of that because it's the same amount from both sides. So that's gone. All right, let's see what I have left on the left mat. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. So I'm going to write negative 4. On the right mat, I see 1, 2 positives. So I have positive 2. So which mat is bigger? Well, 2 is bigger than negative 4, so the right mat is bigger this time. All right, let's go ahead and try this one. Same thing, look for any 0 pairs. I'm looking, I don't really see any 0 pairs. All right, so that was kind of my first step that I do see a 0 pair right here. Okay, so I'm going to cross that off. All right, now I see that this side has a negative tile, and so does this side, and it's in the same region. So it's the exact same amount, so I don't need to compare it, so I'll get rid of that. Okay, up here, I see 3 positive ones. Same thing up here, 3 positive ones. Those are the same, so I don't really need to compare those. So I can get rid of those because it's the exact same amount on both sides. Okay, now another move you might think of is down up here. This is a positive x. Down here, it's a positive x, but it's in the opposite region, so you should think, well, what is this really? It's really a negative x. So if I have a positive x and a negative x, those are going to cancel each other. Okay, so now, just because maybe you might get stuck here and not see anything, there are a couple more moves, but I'm just going to keep going on. This negative x squared tile, it's in the opposite region, so it's really a positive x squared. So I'm going to come and draw it up in the upper region. So it's going to be a positive x squared, so I'll just kind of draw it nice and big. Okay, and I'll cross that off. And this negative 1, it's in the opposite region, so it's really a positive 1. So I'll come draw that up here. All right, now some people, and I'm just going to kind of show you, some people might see, well, I do see an x squared tile from both sides, but what if they didn't see that? Let's just kind of pretend they didn't see it. So let's see what I have left on the left side. On the left side, I have an x squared tile. On the right side, I have an x squared tile and a 1 tile. So x squared plus 1. Okay, let's say you got this far and you're like, oh, I don't know which is going to be bigger. Well, when you're comparing, kind of think, they both have this x squared, so that's going to be the same amount. This side has an extra 1, so this side has to be bigger. Okay, because that's a little confusing, that's why hopefully you'll see they both have x squared tiles, so you can take those away from both sides. So really you would be left with 0 and 1, and then 1 is bigger. All right, this will be our last one. So first thing, let's go ahead and try to make 0 pairs. So I see a 0 pair there. Here's a 0 pair. All right, next thing, I might look at and see, is there the same thing on both sides? So I see a 1 tile here and a 1 tile here. Those are the exact same values on both sides. I see an x tile on this side and x tile on this side. Okay, and then I see a negative 1 and a negative 1. Okay, so let's kind of see what we have left. I don't really see anything else I can cancel. On this side, I see 2 x's, so I'll write 2x, positive 2x. On this side, I see a negative 1, and remember, these are in the opposite region, so this is another negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus this one is negative 6. Okay, and I want to know, well, which side is bigger? Well, on one like this, I think, well, geez, this should be bigger because it's positive, because this is a negative 6. That is not true. Okay, we don't know what x is. If x was a 5, it'd be 2 times 5, which gives me 10. Then this side would be bigger than negative 6. But if x was something else, let's say it was a negative 8. If x was a negative 8, I would do 2 times negative 8, which is negative 16. Now negative 6 is bigger. So sometimes you cannot tell. This would be an example of one where you can't tell which side is bigger. It depends what x is. All right, so we went through some different legal moves today. You may want to take a screenshot of this slide so you can put this in your notes. These are the legal moves that I was using when we were simplifying these tiles.